Team, it is Mario, owner of Sienna Mortgage here in Henderson, Nevada, your favorite local mortgage expert. So, today, as I promised, I wanted to make sure we were able to go live here almost on time. We're just about 7 minutes running behind as I was talking to Sarah behind the scenes, helping her get her live started. But we have Sarah Ortiz with Signature Real Estate here in just a minute. We're going to go live, chat about all of the different fun, just amazing experiences that we've been able to roll out and provide to the last three first-time homebuyers that we've helped here in this last 12 months. I think Sarah does a phenomenal job with her first-time homebuyer presentations, setting expectations, and paving that path for families to make homeownership a reality. So again, as you all know, one of my favorite things to talk about is the first time homebuyer experience and people realizing their American dream. So let me go ahead and bring Sarah into the room. We'll get this conversation started. And if you are here joining us, we greatly appreciate you being here. So hold on one second. Let me grab Sarah. Mrs. Ortiz, welcome to the live.
Hi, thank you.
What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Going pretty good. Thank you. Thank you
Good. I'm
for
glad we got those little technical difficulties out of the way for the live here on your end.
thank you.
Yes, always a fun way to start a Friday. It doesn't feel I feel like it feels way later in the day than it actually is. It's only 10 a.m., but dang, I've been at it for like 5 hours already today.
Wow, nice.
What about you? Okay, that's actually a good way for us to start this conversation. Tell us a little bit about how do you get your days started? I feel like that's so important in the real estate industry with like calendar blocking, planning, scheduling. What does your day kind of day in and day out look like?
I always have my mornings set the same, and then the
Same.
rest kind of fluctuate depending on what type of client I have at the moment. But my mornings pretty much start. I wake up, make some coffee. I have chickens now, so I let the chickens out,
Cool.
feed the dog, let the bird out. Also, just a nice chill morning. Um,
100%.
pretty
Are your
pretty
chickens laying eggs already?
Not yet. In about 2 more months is we can start expecting some eggs.
Nice.
That'd be pretty dope. Yeah.
That's pretty soon. It's gonna save you
Yeah.
some nice cash there as well. But yeah,
Awesome.
okay, so cool. What else does your morning look like? So you've got, get up, coffee,
Mhm.
the chickens, the animals, all fun.
Everybody's fed and taken care of, and then I start, like, with prayer and or read the Bible,
Awesome.
so some spiritual growth there, and then, first thing I like to do is check emails, see what's going on in the brokerage, on the market, check market stats. And then after that, I'll either tend to my active clients are doing or what their needs are, or I start looking for who else is looking to have services, whether they're looking to sell or buy. And so I reach out to past clients. I've been reaching out to my sphere, people that I know,
Good
asking if
job.
they know anybody. So that's really the bulk of the day.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like calendar blocking and having systems in place are, it's like one of my biggest keys to success for sure. So I'm always talking to my different partners, whether they're real estate agents or other people in and around the industry, just to hear like kind of what their systems and processes are for their time.
Mhm.
Because as you know, our time is definitely our most valuable resource. And, working with the families that we work with and clients that we work with, sometimes that time can be taken advantage of. So it's very, very important to calendar block the right way. So I like
Yeah,
to hear that you're doing that. So good job, buddy.
yeah, thank you.
And then right before we hopped on the live, we were talking offline a little bit about so tell us about how long you've actually been in the industry, and then again with this most recent year here being your first real full-time year producing and helping families. But tell us a little bit about your journey so far as a licensed realtor, and then what it's been like just kind of ramping up.
Yes. So before I was licensed, I helped a little bit for a friend. She was a realtor. I helped her with a little bit of her phone calls and
Okay.
her emails, her transactions, kind of like a TC.
Right.
And then once I became licensed, it was more so like it was really all about exposure of how I can help.
Right.
Being new, people kind of questioned it, but I is displaying the knowledge that I had and the strategies that I've known from previous non-licensed experience really came into play.
100%.
So my first year was a little bit shaky, but I still was able to help a family come
Cool.
together, and it also was able to get their closing costs covered and their broker fee fully covered as well at that time.
Awesome.
And then my first year being licensed, the laws changed, making it a little bit more questionable if buyers were going to get the broker fee fully covered like before,
Sure.
and still able to get most of that taken care of. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, just for those that don't know, this last year, Sarah and I have been, partnering together. I think it might have been a little when did we meet each other? Was it actually last year or was it a little bit before last year? Do you remember exactly?
It was last year. It
Yeah,
was
I think
last
it was last
year.
year. And was it were we I'm trying to think. Was it Stefan Smith that had introduced us?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Stefan's a longtime friend and partner of myself and my family, so he's an awesome dude. We love Stefan.
Yeah.
But cool. So in this just last year alone, I was kind of digging through some stats, and we have, of course, 3 families that we funded and served together in this last 12 months. We
Mhm.
have one of them was a relocation VA buyer that, if you remember, helping that VA family, it was kind of a start and stop process with them where they were originally hot and heavy, and then we circled back to the process and the relocation process with them once, we kind of paved that path for them and helped educate them a little bit more on some, proper expectations, which
Mhm.
we can talk more about in a little bit. And then 2 first-time homebuyer, conventional families, which one of which came from your sphere of influence, from
Mhm.
your
Yes,
industry that you work in, and then one was a referral of mine from a past client of mine that we recently closed together. So
mhm.
3, first-time homebuyer families, and in of those families too,
Mhm.
$25,000 in seller credits negotiated on behalf of those 3 families, which is insane. Great job, and I
Thank
feel like you deserve your flowers for that.
No, thanks.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head too, but I'm quite positive that all 3 of those buyers also had their, commissions paid for by the sellers as well, so great job negotiating that as well. But I
Thanks.
feel like just huge wins, you know what I mean? Just
Absolutely.
dominating even in this, I don't wanna say more difficult or tougher market, just different, environment that we're in this last year
Mhm.
with all of the changes with the buyer brokered agreement and the, inventory and the rates and so on and so forth, where a lot of people in our industry deem hurdles, right? We just
Mhm.
continue to win and dominate and help families still achieve their American dreams. So great job,
Amazing.
buddy.
Thank you.
Claps, 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 claps,
Thank
claps.
you.
So tell me about those 3 families. I mean, what did now that you're starting to ramp up a little bit and you're helping obviously more and more families more often having these conversations, I want to talk to you about your buying process, your discovery calls, consultations, and like I love that part of your process. You do a phenomenal job with that.
Thank you.
But what are some big takeaways with those 3 families that you've helped that we've helped together?
Let's see, the big 3 takeaways, from those families. I would say that, expectation, as far as what someone can get for the home they're qualified. A
Okay.
lot of times people think like, "Oh, what kind of house am I gonna get?" And, so even though the automated system kinda sends them everything in a certain price range, they're gonna see, like, fixer-uppers, like 5-bedroom fixer-uppers in the price range, and they're like, "What?" But when I go in and handpick, I'm like, "Hey, I think this matches your family's needs the most," and then people are pleasantly surprised that, with what they're qualified, there is a lot of options.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, automation is a phenomenal tool to leverage in our industry or really in any industry.
Mhm.
Automation is gonna, it's going to continue to grow and be prevalent as, AI grows and things like that. But our value, I feel like, as the experts, and the partners with our clients come in, the details of how we're working with them and what we're manually able to set expectations for, bring to the table for them, or, provide to them that's not, that's specific to their exact scenario, right? So, like, because you do such a good job on your discovery process and having these conversations with your clients and really digging into their needs and wants, you're able to pluck out and procure like exactly what it is that they're looking for, right? So that way, because otherwise you'll have clients that'll just they'll shop forever. They won't really dig into, where they're at. They're not gonna have the excitement that we're so used to with our clients because we are really drilling down into, what their needs and wants are. So, yeah, you do a great job with that, so good job.
Thank you. I look at it as it's all in the questions. Like when
Mhm.
you see their story, but if you ask more questions, you'll also know what exactly they're looking for. If they just say like, "Oh, I like a kitchen," it's like, okay, well, what kind?
Right, exactly.
What's your daily routine? What you need? And
Yeah, the more questions that you ask, the better, and the more detail that you can get from somebody, and, really drilling down into the detail and that, like, the feeling of it too, you know what I mean? Because there's, certain families that have emotional attachment to different things about, either the house or the neighborhood or the area of town or whatever the case may be. And that helps move the process along. You know what I mean? When you can attach some sort of anchor to it, right? To get a buyer motivated, specifically in a market that's a little bit, less exciting or sexy than it normally would be, right? You have to have those things to motivate your clients. So yeah, the less automation, the better when it comes to that part of the process. I feel like it's
yeah,
nice to have it. Obviously, it certainly helps.
right.
There's few, even on my end, there's fewer automations that I like to use. Where on the mortgage side, I feel like when you're working with a like a retail lender or a bank, they love automation. Like it's, fill
Yeah,
out my application and it's going to go through the systems and processes of automatic emails and alerts where, as you can see, the more that we attach ourselves to our clients, right, and really build that trust with them, it helps the process move along a little bit differently. So,
right.
cool. What else? So, questions are super important. Digging into their needs and wants, super important. What else?
Let's see. I do use some automation when it comes to helping as I do my searches.
Hmm.
I'll take notes of what they've liked and what they don't like, and I ask, rating. I do big on rating it from 1 through 5.
Right.
And some are like, "Can I do 7.5?" And I'm like, "No point fives. It's either 1 through 5." Which really, like, hones it in. Is it something you wanna put an offer right now? Is it something if it's the last thing on earth?
Right. Right. Right.
And so I take specific notes of what they've told me, and then I'll go into AI, and then I lay it out, and
100%.
it kinda helps me also with my searchings on handpicking for them.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm actually in the process right now of creating. I'm gonna do like a fillable PDF that I'm gonna send to all of my clients
Mhm.
in the beginning stages of them filling out, what would be a loan app or prior to our discovery Zoom call, and it's gonna be like an all about you PDF where it has very little to do with like the mortgage or whatever process, but I want to know about them. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
want to know about their family, their likes, their dislikes. What are their, major top of mind items for their home purchase? What is their financial goals in the future, things like that. Because the more that we have that available to us, the more that we are familiar with our clients, again, just the better.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm going to have that all about you thing created and it's going to go out to all of our clients moving forward.
That's
So, it'll be
awesome.
cool.
Yes, and then personality traits also make a
Yeah,
huge
exactly.
difference in catering to them and their
Totally.
needs. So if you have someone who's more analytical, I'm giving them all the numbers I can get. If
Right.
you have someone that's more amiable, I'm gonna share with them more the homemaking aspects to the house,
100%.
things like that.
What about the importance of communication? Because that's one thing I feel like to me is just the most important part of everything is that circle of trust and that
Yeah.
communication that I'll explain here in just a bit. But anytime that I've ever been in front of a room of realtors or I've told realtors about what's the most important thing to them in a mortgage partner or lender or whatever, it's always, well, I just want them to answer the phone. And I'm just like, dude, that is the lowest hanging fruit. And it should be like the most obvious non negotiable ever. But
Yes.
it's always the response I get from realtors. It's like, I just want my lender to answer the phone, or I just need to be able to communicate. I'm just like, yo, that's crazy.
Mhm.
And for me, I feel like it's so much the very opposite of that, which, as you know, like we have a system and process that we like to deploy together, right?
Mhm.
Between the group text, group emails, doing the discovery calls together, whether on Zoom or in person. it's very much a group experience, you know what I mean? Which I like to call the circle of trust,
Yeah.
because when you have those communications, and you can maybe speak to this a little bit too, when everyone's on the same page, communicating together, and there is nothing being, no, not one person being left out of the process. We're all in it together, right?
Mhm.
Um, so how do you like that process? I mean, is it a lot different than you've experienced with other people, lenders, whatever? But tell me
Mhm.
how you like it.
Absolutely. It's not only needed for the clients, but it's also needed for the realtors as well. And
100%, right?
I have worked with other lenders before who
Yeah.
were horrible at communication.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I have the let's say for my buyers, I have the listing agent asking what's going on and, with dates approaching, it's just like, I wish I knew, but,
Right.
so yes, like partnering with you has been really important for communication. Um,
Yeah.
so you've been like the best at that.
Thanks,
And
man. Appreciate that.
yeah, and then I heard that like that when I first came into the industry, I heard that was like the number one thing that was always an issue was communication. Like even for clients, they said that they lost contact with their realtor while they were shopping. And so
Yeah.
then they just didn't buy a house because their realtor stopped talking to them. I was just like, oh gosh.
One of the saddest things I think for me that I hear from clients all the time is that when they're, "Oh, well, my realtor just ghosted me," or "My lender just ghosted me, they won't respond." A lot of times, which is this is the worst thing, I feel
Yeah.
like. This is, like, heartbreaking almost. It's because they're just not able to qualify for something at that time, or the person that they're working with deems that they're unworthy, they're not able to qualify, so they're just, like, not worth their time,
Oh,
and it's
depressing.
the worst, I feel like, because I was actually gonna make a video about this earlier in the week, where in our last, sales mastermind that I was talking about, like, that snowball method, right? Kind of building your pipeline of clients month over month and year over year, et cetera, et
Mhm,
cetera. And a lot of that comes down to not having to work with somebody that's only ready in the next 30 days, okay? An ability to be able to grow a buyer, grow homeowner, somebody that is able to achieve homeownership after, okay, achieving these processes.
mhm,
And that's something that I think you do extremely well too. And you're able to join that process because the month of May, we had 9 fundings in the month of May, okay?
mhm.
Which 7 of them, okay, 7 of those fundings, 7 of those families that we helped were not families that were referred to us the month before. They were not
Yeah.
families that were just ready to be out there shopping and buying. They were families that we've been working with 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 2 years to be
Yeah.
able to make them homeowners. Our client, the one that I referred to you, the conventional first-time home buyer,
Mhm,
was a family, again, that was referred to me over a year ago, okay? To be
mhm,
able to get them to the point of homeownership, to be able to explain to them the processes, how to do, what do they have to show, and, so on and so forth. So,
mhm.
it's important to cultivate a client and not just turn and burn them, you know what I mean, if they're not able to qualify right away. So, yeah, when I hear that, like, "Oh, they just ghosted me," it's like, "Well, what happened?" Like, yikes, that's
Mhm.
scary.
Yeah.
So good job, man. Don't ever turn your back on your clients because we always tell people there's never a no. It's just not right now. You know what I mean? These are the
Yeah.
steps and processes to take care of. And if you do it,
Mhm.
we will make you a homeowner, right?
Absolutely. And there has been times where I've had clients and we've gone to previous lenders before you and they were just so discouraged. It was just like, sorry, you don't make enough.
Right, exactly.
It's just like it can
Yeah,
be so discouraging for them. And then it's like I have to go through the whole spiel of like, no, like you can. It's just certain things we gotta work on. You know,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, the client needs to they need the education, right? Because
Yes.
qualifying for a home loan and buying a house and getting a mortgage, it's like the most stressful, confusing thing ever. And especially when, in a higher rate environment or whatever the case may be, things are tougher, things are tighter. So you need a little bit more help, you need a little bit more education, you need a little bit more hand holding. So it's super important to, again, who you partner with matters. Work with the right partners, work with the right team that
Mhm.
wants to help you get there. It's just tough, yeah. Single income households, super tough. Like you have just one person that's trying to buy a house alone without a partner or spouse or roommate or something, super tough, right? That's
Yes.
why we have things like, you've become a little bit more familiar with things like non-occupant co-borrowers, I feel like, right?
Mhm.
Where, a first-time home buyer could buy a house with a family member or relative that's not living with them to help them qualify. It's a tool that we've deployed so many times in this last few years where it's just otherwise that person doesn't become a homeowner. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yes, and a lot of people have that with renting. They have the
Yeah.
co-signers for renting, but I don't think a lot of them realize that they can have that for buying.
100%. Yeah, it's just another tool, and the more education, the better. And you just don't want to tell somebody no. Home ownership should never be a no for, I feel like, for anybody, right? It could be a not right now. This is what the timeline looks like. This is how long it could take you to get there, and these are the steps to make it happen. So, in even if it was 2 years, call it, right? You could start completely fresh at a new job in a new career, making, and
Mm,
just go from there. So,
yeah.
what else? Yeah. So tell me about your I'm a big believer in people doing business with who they know, like, and trust. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
I feel like for me, I definitely always try to check off at least two of those three boxes for everybody. Um, what are your thoughts there as far as like people doing business with you, right?
mhm,
Knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. So, first, like the knowing part, do you dig into your SOI a lot and people around you and all of that stuff?
mhm. Yes, yes, I would say majority of my appointments are set with people that I have known for years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is it like usually personal, family, friends, or people from your industry that you worked in previously, which you can talk about as well? It's always a good thing for people to know.
Yeah.
Um,
It's mostly, let's see, I would say it's a good blend between people that I've known on like friends personally,
yeah, yeah,
and a good mix with the industry and banquets, since there's like hundreds of workers serving in the banquet
100%.
industry. In fact, three of them that I've completed, no, yeah, have been in the industry with banquets.
Awesome.
And then let's see, and then just a few family, but more so the family is out of state, so that's always been referred, but I still help them along
Cool.
with the process. Um,
Very
yeah.
cool, yeah, and then so I'm extremely familiar with the knowing part and
Mhm,
working inside of your SOI and working from referrals, and that's because, again, I'm born and raised here in Vegas,
mhm,
being second generation in the mortgage and real estate business, okay, so, like, we've been here in town for over 30 years, so I'm kind of following up on that path that my mom before me had blazed, you know what I mean? So,
mhm,
we've been recognized in our, um industry for a very, very long time. So people know that, which is a great thing.
mhm,
And I'm always trying to stay in front of people through social media, through local networking events,
mhm,
through anything that you could imagine. That way, you're always top of mind. So that's a huge
mhm,
pro tip for any person in the real estate industry that's either just getting into the business or been in the business for a little while, but try to stay top of mind with your SOI and your sphere. And, it's super duper important for people to
mhm.
know you. Like, can't do
Yes,
business unless people know who you are. You know what I mean?
right.
How about them trusting you? How have you had that, relationship with your clients that do know you? They want to work with you, but how do they trust you?
I think because, I mean, I like to say I'm genuine, but I try to be who I am inside and out.
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so I like to say, like, "What you see is what you get." So this
Right.
is who I am, and I'm compassionate, I care for people. My main thing is I love helping people, and
Definitely.
I feel like that's displayed through, like, some volunteer works that I've done in my past and things like that. So I would say that the people who do know me, they've seen my track record of
Totally.
hardworking, things like that. Definitely in banquets, they see, when I go out of my way once my stuff is done, I'm always lending a helping hand to the next neighbor next to me.
Yeah,
So like that displays also my work ethics in real estate.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like to do a lot too is, sharing the wins
Mhm,
with our community, right? Whether that be on social media or whatever, but sharing the wins to help build some of that trust with the other people that are kind of
mhm,
watching and that know you, right? The ones that you're staying top of
mhm.
mind with.
That makes sense.
That way you are perceived, of course, as the expert, right? So the more that you're perceived as the expert, you show those wins, you go into detail with, the families that you've helped, how you've helped them, how you serve them, etc., helps build that trust. You know what I mean? Because believe it or not, I actually believe that it can be more difficult sometimes working with family, friends, relatives, coworkers, whatever,
Mhm.
because, and this might be a little bit different on my end because I'm dealing with finances and things that are super duper personal to people.
Mhm.
But sometimes you'll get people that actually want to, go the other way just to keep things separate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the more that they trust you, right, the more that they're willing to work with you. So trust building is super duper important, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then you're just super cool. So I'm just guessing most people like you anyways.
Awesome ability.
Your likability stats are pretty high, man. So good
Yeah,
job.
thanks. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. How about we talk a little bit about like the buyer commission thing? Because I feel like again, in this last 3 deals that we've helped families with this last year,
Mhm.
hasn't come up or been an issue. So,
Yeah.
how do you have those conversations with your clients, and what do you set expectations for? And,
Mhm.
just I'm a big believer in transparency and,
Right.
full disclosure with your clients, right? Like it is what
Mhm.
it is. This is how we navigate these waters. So, how do you set those expectations with them, and then what do you
Mhm.
kind of game plan moving forward?
Yeah, so I let them know how the laws have changed, whereas before sellers were it was just in as a part of their costs
Mhm.
in getting their home sold. But now that it's the buyers are responsible, I put it that way that like now the buyers are responsible for it, but we are still seeing sellers cover most of it to help a buyer buy because it is a little bit more difficult for a buyer to be complete 100% responsible for the broker's commission.
Right.
So with our negotiations, I let them know that if we're able to cover all of it, or if not most of it, then just get prepared and be ready for that extra leftover. Could range anywhere from 1,000 to like 4,000, depending on the price points and everything.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm always going to try my best to pull in the best deal for them because even whatever closing costs is negotiated, sometimes that can cover what could
Yeah.
have been out of pocket
100%.
for them for a fee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I think just setting expectations with your clients from the very, very beginning and
Mhm.
having full transparency as you do is extremely important
Mhm.
because nobody's going to, you know what I mean? When a client understands something, when they
Mhm.
understand something, when you've shown them what it actually is, you break it down for them, and then you have a game plan moving forward. Not
Mhm.
only are you being honest and transparent, but you're also showing your value and worth with, okay, how do we, um, get that for you, or where, how do we negotiate that for you, or how do
Mhm.
we help you otherwise, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely feel like you attack it both ways, right? Like
Mhm.
closing it and then going out there and negotiating it. So good job there,
Thank you.
with that for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, it really hasn't been a thing, especially right now with, you have some kind of like higher, rises in inventory. So homes are sitting a little bit longer. There's more room to negotiate. There's more seller credits available. So
Oh,
in a market like right now where there's
yeah.
more buyer opportunity available, it just allows you to get out there and negotiate for them even more, right? Showing your value more, being more value to your client.
Mhm.
This is actually probably a really good market for you as a buyer's agent, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then even then with the sellers, like, it's just they gotta kinda hold their ground with not giving too much, but at the same time, setting the expectation for sellers. Like, if you're gonna sell right now, you have to be prepared to offer closing costs. You have to be prepared to give those things. So, on both sides,
Yeah.
expectations for both of them.
That's a part on the listing side that,
Yeah.
I've always seen some, deficiencies in where it's like there's maybe not enough, I feel like, urgency or education with the client. You know what I mean? Like I feel like a lot of agents are super excited to just get a listing.
Realistic.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean? They're like, "Yay, I got a listing. That's fantastic." But
like, overpriced
that
by 20,000.
yeah, that could be super bad actually for
Yeah.
you if you have a listing that's just sitting there for months after months after months, and then you pull it
Mhm.
off and put it back on and put and, eventually the client, if you haven't tapped into exactly what their urgency is, you know,
Mhm.
like that could just sit there forever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or they don't have urgency with you in the beginning when you're doing it, but then they fire you and get another agent in there when there is urgency because you haven't shown your value prior to that, you know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
there's actually, like, 2 or 3 homes in my neighborhood that are up for sale right now, and I feel like all 3 of them have been sitting for a little while,
Yeah.
which is not a great thing, but,
Mhm.
like, one of the homeowners I actually know personally, and they were
Yeah.
talking to me, and they're just like, "I'm not in a rush to sell it," you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to sell it. They're moving to another state, but
Yeah.
in that case, they don't have the urgency to, whatever,
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
think setting expectations both on the buy side and the listing side is
Yeah.
super important.
Super important. Yeah, like, once I had a seller, she was just like, "Oh, yeah, I can move whenever," and then she found a house she fell in love with in another state, already signed, went under contract, and we're like, "Whoa, we
Right,
gotta
right.
get people now." So,
Yeah.
yeah, I told her it was, like, the best way to get it faster is to offer the closing costs.
Yeah, 100%. Offering the closing costs kinda make it attractive to a buyer. A lot of the buyers in this market right now, believe it or not, they're first-time home buyers, like, they need help, you know what I mean? There's less noise in the market right now from, like, when I bought my house in 2021 when there was 8,000,000 buyers in the market for one house, you know what I mean? And it was nearly impossible for a first-time home buyer. Now, they don't have to worry about multiple offers. They don't have to worry about all the competition, and they can, ideally get those concessions and, negotiated closing costs that they need. So, it's a great market for first-time home buyers, I feel like,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Oh, yeah, I do. And I
What
actually
about
pulled
Oh, go
some
ahead.
stats. I don't know at some point on the call if you'd like me to go over some of the
No,
stats.
100%, please, yeah, fire away.
Yeah, for sure. So today that have came active on the market, 248 homes, and back on the market that have been like sitting, taken off, and came back about
Right.
31.
Okay.
Um, but how many properties have decreased in price today is 200.
Yeah.
Homes have decreased their prices. 111 are under contract, and only 90 have sold today.
Wow, okay. How many under contract again?
111.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool. So there's
that's
definitely activity for sure,
right.
right? And again, just with us here and just in May, right? A lot of activity, a lot of families that we were able to serve. So there's definitely activity going on, but it's in pockets, right? It's with realistic expectations.
Mhm.
It's with, and again, I don't know how do you have any breakdown for like what the split is between cash buyers versus financed offers? Probably not, right?
Ooh, probably not, easy access. I probably could, but it might take me a minute to pull
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But, I mean, I would imagine, obviously, we're seeing, predominantly financed offers, right? Where remember, any time that you have financing involved, okay,
Mhm.
not necessarily the buyer, but the lender that's financing that loan, okay,
Mhm.
needs to make sure that the property is worth what you're paying for it, right?
Yes.
Obviously, that's done through an appraisal, and that appraisal is prepared using data and analytics from something called comparable sales data, right?
Mhm.
So within the last 12 months, what that's similar to that property has sold. When was it sold? Again, it has to be recorded before the date of the purchase agreement. So that's super duper important. Has to be recorded prior to the purchase agreement. And what does that historical data as far as like value look like, right?
Yeah.
Um, what you're offering on a house doesn't necessarily mean that that house is worth what you're offering, right?
Mhm.
So for the buyers, we always educate them through the first discovery call of what that process looks like. What does the appraisal look like? Why is it important? And then again, reminding them that that's something that's a threshold that's protecting them, right, from
Mhm.
overpaying for a property.
Yes.
So that's why you do see a lot of price adjustments or price decreases because you have to be at least in a realistic territory of what that comparable sales data reflects. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And
That's
you've seen that. I mean, have you seen a lot of pushback from from listings or from sellers that are just like unrealistic with what their sales prices or expectations are?
yeah, so, the buyers that just bought, last week, prior to that home, we had put an offer on a home, and I had looked at the comparables while we were waiting to hear back from their answer.
Right.
We looked, and I was like, "It's about 30,000-40,000 overpriced."
Yo,
Mhm.
that's a lot.
Remember? Yeah, which means there's no way it's gonna appraise for that price, which
Right.
would make it difficult for any buyer to buy when it's
Right.
not appraised at that price.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that's comforting, I feel like, to our clients, to
Mhm.
buyers, that when they're educated the right way, right? These are numbers, this is data, this is all stuff that we can pull up way before you submit an offer. You know what I mean? Actually, we want to pull it up that way you can submit an offer strategically the right way, asking for the right concessions or credits, whatever, based on what that submitted price is. But
Yeah.
you have to do so realistically. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can't be like offering ridiculous numbers that, they're not going to work, you know what I mean, when you have a financed offer.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you do a great job of setting expectations and then partnering with me to kind of come up with those, numbers ahead of time, super
Yeah.
important. So, great job with that.
Thank you.
What about being a problem solver? Like, have you come across a lot of issues, on our files, obviously, luckily, knock on wood, they're with proper preparation, right? We face as few issues as possible, as few roadblocks and hurdles. But have you come across that in your career? And like, how were you able to
Mhm.
navigate that?
Oh, yeah. I would say most of our deals have been pretty smooth sailing.
Yep.
The last one, it did come into question with, rights to the property with the Nevada Water,
Hmm.
Vegas Valley Water, because the sellers went through the, water saving program and got
Hmm.
paid to turn their land into desert landscaping.
Okay.
That made the water company have full access on that space.
Hmm.
Meaning my the buyers, they really wanted to get a hot tub, so it's kind of very
Ooh,
questioning if they buy this home, would they even be able to do that?
right.
Part of their goal for their backyard, and it would suck to buy a house and not be able to do what you want to it in the yard. So I had to make calls, go in person. I feel like going in person, you get things answered so much better than
Sure. 100%.
the run around. And we were able to get answers answered where they could. They were able to. So
Really cool. So,
continuing the sale, like they're more confident, like we're good to go.
hell yeah. So showing your value even more to your clients. Very important. Great job. Is that a disclosure that has to be sent over ahead of offer acceptance or during like SRPD, or because I've seen a lot of the irrigation
Mhm,
and all of that stuff here in Nevada, specifically in Las Vegas,
mhm.
um becoming a thing. Like, it's
Oh yeah.
becoming a thing for sure. I get mail on it all the time, actually.
Yeah, and people don't realize that when that happens, that is stuck on the property for the life of the property. Like that is forever.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's crazy.
Unless you pay back what they've paid plus interest, and there's, like, an interest rate that fluctuates with what
What
they would
the heck?
require. So what price is now to reverse it will be completely different in 20 years from now.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So that's the reason not a lot of people know, but yes, it has to be disclosed. The sellers did disclose it in the SRPD.
Okay.
But if you don't have a proper realtor to explain and go in depth with what that is, it can
Right.
easily be overlooked by a buyer, which is scary. And so also in the preliminary report, they also gave the recorded documents on what that came into play. So I like to go in and thoroughly read it so that I can relay the information properly to the buyers.
Great job, buddy. Yeah,
Mm,
that's and again, just value, value, value. You are showing how valuable you are to your buyers. So
yeah,
great job. Especially in the event that they ever had to pay you a commission. It's like, okay, here's all of the things I'm doing for you, and this is where my value is. So great job.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's actually a good so two things. I wanted to talk about like solar just for a minute, here in
Mhm,
just a sec, because that's something I'm super familiar with. I have on my house, and then the reason behind that and how it can kind of pose a roadblock for some buyers in the market too.
mhm. Right.
But the preliminary title report. So this is something that is probably not talked about enough,
Not
and
enough.
something that we always explain to our clients and buyers about them getting clean title on the property.
Mhm,
Because in that preliminary title report, if you guys are not familiar, inside of that report is basically going to list all of the land rights, water rights, sewer rights, trash rights, and then specifically to the property itself, what current liens are attached to that property. So obviously you would have, if you have financing on that property, a first mortgage, if there's a second mortgage, a HELOC, if there's a solar system on the property, if you filed for bankruptcy and there's creditor, so on and so forth, right? That preliminary title report, one of the reasons you have a title company, okay, that intermediary third party that's doing title and escrow, is so they can pull a title report on that house and make sure they deliver to you as the new owner of that property a clean title. right? You wanna make sure that you're not assuming anyone else's liabilities. So, yeah, good job going over that stuff and keeping an eye on that stuff. Obviously, it's very important on our end, but,
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of realtors actually digging in on their side too, so
Ah, really.
good job, buddy. How about solar? Does solar come up a lot with you on either the buy or the sale side, and how do you approach solar?
Mm, so not so much on the sale side. The listings that I've had, they haven't had solar, so
Okay.
nice and easy,
It'll come up, don't worry.
With our first clients together, they bought a home that was solar, and right away I was already prepared of what roadblocks could come. But the fact that the solar panels were already paid off,
Mhm.
I was like, "Yeah, this is gonna be a great deal for you because
Yeah, that's a
in
huge
it
win.
comes in with that savings of electricity."
It's huge, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, paid off solar is actually and
yeah.
again, I'm gonna talk a little bit more in detail about solar specifically, but having a paid off solar system, especially depending on the size of house, if it's, like, over a 2,000 square foot house, two-story, let alone if you had a pool, the whole 9 yards, right? Depending on
Mhm.
the electricity usage in that house, could actually be saving you, like, several $100 a month in
Mhm.
power bill. It's like and that's right now, let
Yeah.
alone 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It's crazy.
Mhm.
But I know solar is actually a big thorn in the side of many real estate agents or sellers in this market because they're just not educated on solar, right? Like
Right.
the pros and cons of it, what actually solar is, right? Because you have different solar types. You
Mhm.
have different solar contracts that are either what's called a PPA, that's a power purchase agreement. The power purchase agreement is extremely different than a solar lease. Okay. Solar lease is extremely different than a solar loan. Solar loan is extremely different from all of those, right? They're all a little bit different anytime you have solar panels on a property that is not 100% owned. Do you know the difference of those 3 things?
Ooh, I thought the PPA was the solar loan, actually.
It is not, no. So the solar PPA stands for power purchase agreement. So
Mhm.
this back in the day, especially with, like, Solar City and places like that, was I don't wanna say, like, the only thing available, but it was the most popular thing available because basically what you do on a solar power purchase agreement is you're exchanging the cost for your electricity, okay?
Mhm.
So, whatever the current cost for electricity is with Nevada Energy, let's say it's 16 or 17 cents per kilowatt hour or whatever, right?
Mhm.
With a power purchase agreement, you lock in your rate of electricity. So instead of paying 16 or 17 cents for your energy, you're paying 12 or 13 cents, whatever. So it's a reduced discounted rate for your electricity. And that's
Yes.
all you're doing. You're swapping one for the other, right? So
Mhm.
instead of using NV Energy's electricity in your house, you're using your solar provided electricity at the lower cost, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, you don't have solar being provided in the evening, right? So if you don't have solar credits, you're using Nevada Energy at night, but that power purchase agreement offsets a pretty decent amount or chunk of your power bill, especially in the daytime. But again, you're just exchanging price per kilowatt hour for a discounted price per kilowatt hour, right?
Mhm.
So the longer you have that solar system and the more increases in NV energy rates, the more attractive that becomes. Now, that's the easiest one to work with on the mortgage side because
Mhm.
there is no fixed monthly cost. Does that make sense? So,
Interesting.
like, on a solar lease or a solar loan, you have a fixed monthly cost, like, this is what the solar bill or whatever is.
Mhm.
On a power purchase agreement, you don't have that, right? So, it's just a reduced price per kilowatt hour, so there's no like, the buyer doesn't have to qualify for anything additional. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Okay, so that does make it easier.
It's way easier. There's no additional, like, financial obligation to the buyer there as far as their mortgage qualifying goes. But if you have a solar lease or a solar loan, so those 2, right, there's a static it's the same every month
Mhm.
payment due for the solar system, right? On the
Yeah.
solar lease, you don't own it. On the solar loan, you own it. So the lease is, let's say, $100 a month in, month out. The buyer would have to qualify with that additional $100 as part of their debt to income ratio. Same
Mhm.
thing on the solar loan, but then they own the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So good old solar. Always love to chat about it because I know a lot of realtors it like kind of pisses them off. Excuse my language,
Mhm.
because it will sometimes get in the way of somebody being able to buy the house or qualify or whatever. So
Right.
when you come across that, let me know and I can help walk you through that.
Will do.
For
Yeah.
sure.
'Cause I've always understood it as the buyer has to be eligible for both the solar loan
Mhm.
and the mortgage loan, and I
Yeah,
think
exactly. Yeah, because it's part of the debt to income ratio. And then there's a separate qualifying process for what they have to actually do a transfer in the name of their, obviously they're transferring it to their name as well. And a
mhm,
lot of the solar companies will require like some sort of like soft credit check and things like that to transfer the ownership into the new buyer's name. So
mhm,
there's that. And then the last thing, so anytime you have a solar system on your house and there's like some sort of like lien or liability attached to it, you
mhm.
have something called a UCC1 filing. You know what that is?
No.
So a UCC1 is a fixture filing. So it's technically a lien on the property, okay?
Mm, okay.
It's but it's for like a home improvement. It's a home improvement lien, right? So
Gotcha.
in order to record clean title on the house when you're buying a house and getting a new mortgage, right? You have
Mhm,
to get that solar lien removed, right? So the solar
mhm,
company has to submit something to the title company called a subordination agreement for them
mhm.
to remove the lien and then put the lien back on once the new mortgage is recorded. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So keep
yeah.
an eye out for that because that's called a
Ooh,
UCC1 filing.
UCC1. Got
Yeah, good times.
it.
Okay, cool. So
Mhm,
we've talked a little bit about the market. Obviously there's a lot of first-time home buyers in the market. There's a lot of families that need to be helped, educated, just have expectations set and, whether they're buying tomorrow, 30 days from now, or a year from now,
mhm.
working with the right partners is super important. So, anything on that you wanted to touch on before we get to just some fun stuff and wrap it up?
Oh, yes. So I know that Pahrum's been getting pretty popular lately.
Rump is popping off. Okay.
Yeah, in March, I helped some buyers out there,
Okay.
and then I myself own land out there, and I did a ton of research back in, like, 2020, 2021, and I feel like that really set me up to have the knowledge. Pahrump is like a whole separate market. There's
Yeah, totally. It really is.
lot more nuances to the properties themselves, like
Yeah.
a well, septic,
Yeah.
a water,
Property lines, yeah.
soil rights.
Yeah.
So much more to it than what we have here in Vegas. So when I have people talk to me about Pahrump, I'm like, make sure whether you choose me or someone else, make sure they know Pahrump because it's a different animal.
Yeah, and make sure too, anytime that you're working with a client in Pahrump, especially a buyer,
Yes.
that they or you review the flood map, okay,
Mhm.
with that
Mhm.
client, because there's like a 95% chance when someone's buying in Pahrump that that property will be in some sort of a flood zone.
Mhm.
Anytime you have a flood zone, obviously, on a financed loan, that person's gonna need flood insurance.
Mhm.
So, flood insurance is something separate from homeowners insurance that they need in addition to, that's part of their debt to income ratio, that could be part of the total affordability piece.
Mhm.
So, just be familiar anytime someone's in Pahrump, even areas here in Henderson and
Mhm.
some parts of North Las Vegas are also parts of flood zones. So,
Right.
the title company, again, that intermediary third party, they're always providing something called a plat map,
Mhm.
right? That's going to show you if the property is potentially in a flood zone.
Right. That and then majority of the homes out there are manufactured homes.
Ooh, do you want to talk about manufactured homes for a sec?
Ooh, please.
I'm a fan. Okay, where most mortgage lenders and people in my industry are not fans of manufactured homes because they can be very difficult to finance.
Mhm.
Um, the more you know, the better. Are you
Mhm.
familiar? So tell me, are you familiar with a HUD tag and a HUD plate?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what that is. So
It is.
the importance of making sure when you're
Mhm.
buying a manufactured property or proposing to finance a manufactured property, I mean, this is doesn't matter if it's FHA or conventional because you need it on both, but that
Right.
that property is fixed to the foundation. Okay,
Mhm.
so it was at one time moved to this one place. It's been affixed. Okay, so you're going to actually have an affidavit of a fixture to
Mhm.
the actual dwelling and that it hasn't been moved again since being affixed to the property. That's
Mhm.
what's called real property. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, good job, buddy. I love it.
I helped,
So
2 manufactured homes.
hell yeah, yeah, I've done a ton of them. So it's good to have a partnership where both people are on the same page there.
Mhm.
And then so yeah, it has to be fixed to the property, it has to be converted to real property. has to have a HUD tag and plate. In
Mhm.
addition to that, there's an actual data sheet for the actual property that's placed. Usually it's placed inside of the actual property in like a closet or something.
Mhm.
You have to get a picture of that. If you don't have the pictures for the HUD tag, plate, and data sheet, they are public data. So you can actually pull them from public data websites. You have to pay for them or whatever. So it's always
Mhm.
nice to have pictures if you can get it.
Yeah.
But other than that, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
pretty much like buying a regular single family residence.
It really is, it really is. And I
Yeah,
know sometimes it can be attractive to some people when it's not fixated into the ground and it's like registered with the DMV and it's like lower property taxes, things like that. But when it comes to a mortgage, it
exactly.
it it makes it difficult to
Yeah,
finance.
that's the part where it converts from being a mobile home to a
Mhm.
manufactured home. Manufactured home is why you're able to qualify for traditional financing through Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA insurance, being that it's converted to real property. On a
Mhm.
mobile home, you can still finance it, but it's not considered real property because of those other elements not being present. So the financing would be way different, more expensive, things like that.
Harder to I heard also higher interest rates by
Oh,
like
yeah. Yeah, 100%.
quadrupled. So
Yep. Yeah, that's one of the things with whether it's a manufactured home or a condo or whatever, right?
mm,
When these properties meet these guidelines that mortgage loans abide by, right? Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, USDA guidelines, okay? Those entities are insuring that property in some way, shape, or form. Okay. That's the reason why you have on all of those products the ability to finance at the lowest rates available. Okay. Because if this property passes this criteria, this entity is going to insure or guarantee that loan. Does that make sense?
nice. Yes.
So same thing like on a condo, right? So if you have a warrantable condo versus non-warrantable condo. So warrantable condo means that this particular condo or HOA passes these specific metrics that the lender. What was that?
I'm not sure. But that
um, I don't know what that buzz was, but anyways, the condo passes these specific requirements for whether it be like investor concentration, budget, master insurance, whatever. If it does not pass those, or if it's what's called non-warrantable, that's when you get into other financing or lenders that do financing for that non-warrantable problem, right?
mhm.
Also, rate will be much higher, down payment requirement will be much higher because it's not through one of these Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA type programs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Same thing on manufactured homes. So if it can fit that qualifying criteria, and if you know, right, as the realtor, what that qualifying criteria is, you can
Mhm.
set the expectations with your clients much earlier in the process
Yeah.
versus tell me if you've heard this before.
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't know that that condo was non-warrantable or it didn't qualify for financing. And now now that just the deal's falling through,
Oh,
right?
ouch.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
definitely happens, right? So you gotta do your due diligence and homework ahead of time. Or,
Mhm.
"Oh, I thought that mobile home was converted to real property, and, oh, it doesn't
Mhm.
qualify for my," this is something that we can pull up really easily on
Mhm.
our end. We'll know, if you're doing your homework.
Yeah.
Um, things like that. So,
Mhm.
just setting expectations as you already do. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. And communication.
Hey, circle of trust, man. Communicate, communicate,
Mhm.
communicate. I actually, when we're in the process of okay, now we're either pre-approved or under contract or whatever, like unless it's an absolute emergency or something absolutely private, like I want all of the communication to be together with the client. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That way, not
Yes.
only can we document that we're like letting them know everything every step of the way, obviously,
Mhm.
but that not one person is out of the loop,
Mhm.
right? If
Right.
we're communicating together in those group texts, in those group emails, on those group calls,
Mhm.
everybody's on the same page, right?
Right.
I mean, I guess every once in a while you would have to have private conversations for certain things, obviously, but
Mhm.
do you agree with that? Like having
I
the more
do.
communication together, the better?
The better. Absolutely. I always get a little cautious because I always was told that lenders don't want to hear too much about the repairs going on.
Sure, yeah, that makes
Right.
sense.
So that's the only time I really try to keep that separate. But other than that,
Cool.
the more the better together.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, request for repairs, things like that. Again, the home inspection doesn't have anything to do with the mortgage and lending side. So,
Mhm.
I always tell people if they have, personal question, I don't know, whatever, they can of course let me know, but that's something that's always handled separately with the agent for sure.
Yes.
Now, how they're, you guys are, circling back on the request for repairs, or are we getting additional seller credit to offset the request for repairs or whatever? I
Mhm.
always encourage people to let me know about that too, so that way we can continue strategizing together.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. I'm tired of talking about work now. Let's talk about just real quick, maybe 5 minutes about you again. So, your husband is a professional artist.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Tell me about that because
Ooh.
I have, in the last week or two, I've become a huge fan of his. I might
Ooh.
actually ask him to commission some art for me if he has
Oh,
some free time.
awesome. Yeah, he does do commissions.
Hell yeah! So I
Yeah,
might do that because his art is amazing.
amazing, right? And he freehands it all.
Dude, what
Yeah.
the heck? So
Yeah,
did he
system.
go to, like, art school or
No, no, he's just always been an artist. He started off with doodles and then growing up and
what the heck?
collaborating with friends who were into art and just practice and studying. He reads comics to study and
Wow.
like a flow of things. Yeah.
I mean, I was low key an art nerd when I was a kid. I mean,
Mhm.
I used to recreate or try to recreate all of my favorite, like, X-Men stuff and whatever, right?
Mhm.
And it didn't even stick ar like, I'm not even at equally as good as I used to be at art. I'm, like, way worse, which is kinda crazy for him to just continue to get better and better. He
Yes.
must practice quite a bit.
Yeah, he does. He does.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So, yeah, remind me, I wanna definitely have a chat with him about maybe commissioning some art and doing something for the company, which,
Mhm.
I don't know if you saw on social, but today is actually the one-year birthday of Sienna Mortgage. It's
Happy
so
birthday,
I
Sienna.
know,
Happy
I
birthday.
know. That's my baby, so I can't believe she's made it to 1 years old. It's crazy.
That is super cool. That's right, it was just last year.
Yep, it was last year. It was a crazy this time last year was insane because the
Mhm,
transition from me being a licensed loan officer at my previous company to being the licensed loan officer and qualified employee and owner of my own mortgage brokerage. I
mhm.
don't know if you remember, there was, like, kind of a little 45-day time period where my license was moving over, and I was like I had to, like, refer business out actually because I had to
Oh,
wait for the state of Nevada for the final approval. It was crazy, man. It was
mhm.
insane.
Really?
But, yeah, and I also posted, I guess, within the first year of any small business,
Mhm.
25% of small businesses fail in the first year,
Really? First year?
which, knock on wood, that is
Mm.
not we have evaded that statistic.
Woo!
Hey, we are
Awesome. Out of the
thriving.
water too.
Blessed and thriving, and because of amazing partners like you, so great job.
Thanks.
What about okay, so we have a final question for you. Is that buzzing on your end or my end?
I don't know where it is. I believe it's on my end, but I have everything, like,
No,
on
no,
the
you're good.
would
I
just
just didn't know if it's something on my end. I'm like, "Where is that coming from?"
yeah.
Okay, so tell me what Sarah Ortiz, Keys with Ortiz, what is your goals for the rest of 2025? So we have another whole half of a year to go here. We have the rest of the summer, or summer's just
Mhm.
starting, I guess,
Yeah.
fall and winter. Tell me about the rest of your year.
The rest of my year is my goal is to help at least one family a month in whatever it looks like, whether it's selling, buying, renting. Uh,
Cool.
just I love helping people, and I try to meet that target of
I
once a
love
month.
it.
Yeah.
That's a great goal. Now,
Mhm.
what are the activities behind that goal? That's one thing too, where sometimes
Mm.
I have these conversations with my partners. I'm like, cool, goal, love it, perfect. What are the activities that you deploy to make it happen?
Conversations is
Hey,
number one. Is if you're not having conversations, how are you going to set appointments? If you're not setting
exactly,
appointments, how are you going to reach that goal? Right. So it's
exactly.
all backtracking of what's my goal and what to do to do that. So aside from conversations, I've been doing some open houses.
Yep.
Last year, I did a lot of open houses. I did like one every other weekend,
Yeah,
and
you crushed that open house that you did with my wife last week, and they have a contract, an actual cash offer. And I guess Jenny was
yeah,
telling me that I don't know if you were standing next to her, but I guess it was like an older couple that had come
mhm,
in that she spoke to,
yeah,
and that was actually the couple that is buying the house.
I
So
knew it too. Like I can kind of tell when it's funny because when buyers have a certain look, it's like
yeah,
that's the one. This is it.
100%. Yeah,
It, it's
100%.
like the eyes are gleaming, but also it met everything that they needed in the home, and then
Yep.
also I was able to talk up the home to them. She said she had like 3 teenage boys, and it was right around the corner from where she takes them to school. So I'm like, "You could dirt bike in the wilderness right here.
Heck
You
yeah.
can do basketball off the side." So
Yeah.
talking about around the property, not just the property, but
Yeah, totally. That area kinda reminded me of, like, when I was growing up here in Las Vegas, which wasn't nearly obviously that far out, but the area town that I grew up in was, like, about as far as Vegas went. So me and my brother, same thing. We had, go-karts, dirt bikes, like, whatever. You could just basically do anything that you wanted around the surrounding area in the desert. It was fun.
yeah.
So cool, great job. I actually really encourage all of my real estate partners, especially if they're newer, fresher in the business, to get out there and do open houses. Not to obviously, I don't think you're trying to sell that specific house, right? A lot of the time, it's not even your listing, it's someone else's listing.
Mhm.
But it's getting you out there in the community, allowing you to stay top of mind, making some content, meeting some families,
Yeah,
building a lead, generating some business to go out there and buy some other stuff. So,
right. And
good
I
job.
created a video that I'm still editing to post, and I was like, "Oh, I went under contract before I could post the video." But I wanna be like, "You wanna buy the last house in Vegas?"
Right. Yeah, it was definitely out there, man. When because I personally was out there with the listing agent the week prior to that, and I was
Mhm.
like, this is literally the last house here in this
Yeah,
side of town, so
yeah, it is.
it's crazy. Alright, cool. Well, we have, don't forget June 24th, which is the Tuesday, kind of starting somewhere, I think, around noon, I think I said, through the rest of the
Mhm.
afternoon. We have the next relationship-based sales mastermind, The Undeniable Realtor, that I am, preparing part 2 for.
Nice.
How did you enjoy the first part
I
last
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It helped with a lot of, like, firming the foundation of a business,
Yep.
uh, uh, putting in the footwork and everything, reaching out to.
Yeah, 100%. For those of you guys that don't know, I've been hosting and kind of putting together this relationship-based mastermind class for my real estate partners, as well as other people in the industry in and around. We hosted at Chicago Title, a location of choice. We all sit down in a room together. It's not me standing in the front of a class teaching. It's me inside of the class alongside you guys, role playing, discussing strategies, really honing in on sales. Okay. Like I know a lot of people hate that word and try not to use it as much as possible. But at the end of the day, regardless of what part of the industry that you're in, you have to remember that we're in sales. Okay. So, although there's a lot of us like myself that really dig into being an advisor, understanding all of the complexities of finance and obviously all of that stuff, but we're in sales. And sales has to do with trust building, communication, setting expectations, delivering results, so on and so forth. So the more that we can train on those things together and role play and all that stuff, I feel like it helps. Heck
So much. Yeah, it does.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for joining me. It's been over an hour now that we've been on this live, which is flies by.
we sure did.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, enjoy your Friday. Obviously, always here for you as needed.
Mhm.
What else? Do you want to leave us with anything?
Let's see. Um, do I wanna leave? I think I'm drawing blank here.
You're good. I got you.
Yeah.
Remember, teamwork makes the dream work, and who you partner with matters. All right, buddy. Enjoy your weekend. Congratulations on a very successful last year, and let's keep helping families make the dream come true.
Awesome. Thank you for doing what you do.